bail is not supposed to be used as a punishment. Okay, that's number one. The purpose of bail is to simply ensure that people who have been accused, again, not convicted, people that have been accused of a crime come back to court for their trial to defend themselves against the accusation that has been placed against them. People's voice, the people's voice. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the people's voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the people's voice. Thank you again for checking us out this week. It is greatly appreciated. Hope everyone has had a productive and enlightening week. And again, I appreciate you checking out the podcast as we get started here today. So, today I want to get into a discussion about bail and specifically commercial bail here in the United States in that process. As many of you may know, just from hearing the stories or doing maybe your own research, or just conversation in general. The conversation around bail reform in the United States has been pretty hot and heavy. I would say definitely for the last 3-4 years, kind of, through the whole Ferguson and then Black Lives Matter and then the pandemic and George Floyd. There's been a lot of conversations about the, criminalization of particularly people of color and policing, obviously, in neighborhoods of color, which kind of brings me to the topic today, because in these communities where you have over policing and you have criminalization of people of color, all of that eventually leads to many people ending up in jail. And, one of the consequences of being arrested and landing into jail is that you now have to figure a way to get out of jail, and then also, how are you going to be able to defend yourself? Because, a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but many people assume that once you are arrested, you have committed a crime and you basically are going to court to find out what your sentencing is. And, that's not what, arrest is about. It's basically you've been accused of something, and, you have the opportunity to defend yourself, to present whatever evidence or, give whatever testimony that you can lend to alleviate yourself from that situation. Now, one of the challenges with that is that when you are arrested, you have to have the proper income to fight that case, so to speak. And this is where we land at with commercial bail in the United States. The process of bail is, again, being heavily scrutinized. And, based on some of this research that I was doing for this podcast, I definitely understand why. Now, not to say that I didn't understand it before, because, I've come from a neighborhood that was very overly policed. And, during my time and even as an adult now, unfortunately, I know many people that have unfortunately had to go through this. So I'm very familiar with the process, but when you do research into some of these topics, and I encourage everyone to do it. I mean, I'm doing it for the podcast, but before the podcast, this is things that I've done because I like to be aware of what is taking place, particularly here in the country that I occupy. But anyway, getting back. So what happens is you have communities that are very over policed. This is typically communities of color. And then what ends up happening is that a person is arrested and taken to jail. Now, I'm just talking about jail. I'm not talking about prison. I'm talking about local jail. And now the person is sitting in jail and they want to get out, right? Nobody wants to sit in jail. This is where bail comes in. So, as always, let me give a quick definition of bail and then I'll kind of, move the conversation along. So, what is bail? And again, this is bail in the United States. And actually, there are not many countries that still do cash bail. I think it's the Philippines and the United States are, I think, the last two, if I believe. I know Australia and South Africa and a couple of other countries have done away with it. But the United States and I know the Philippines are the two countries that still do cash bail. But what is bail? So bail, and I'm reading the definition directly from the American Bar Association. Bail is the amount of money defendants must post to be released from custody until their trial. Bail is not a fine. That's key. That's key information. It is not supposed to be used as punishment. The purpose of bail is simply to ensure that defendants will appear for trial and all pretrial hearings for which they must be present. Bail is returned to defendants when their trial is over, and in some states, minus a processing fee. That's the official definition from the American Bar Association, right? Now, here's the thing, and let me go back to that definition because there's some key elements in here. Number one, bail is not supposed to be used as a punishment, okay? That's number one. The purpose of bail is to simply ensure that people who have been accused, again, not convicted, people that have been accused of a crime come back to court for their trial to defend themselves against the accusation that has been placed against them. And then the third thing is bail is returned to defendants when their trial is over. This is where the conversation now flips over from what the purpose of bail is, and then we go into the commercial bail industry. Now, the commercial bail industry in the United States is designed to support that last part of that definition where bail is returned to defendants when their trial is over. Well, in many cases, again, because the arrests are taking place at a higher rate in communities of color and lower income communities, many times the individuals that are arrested do not have the money to post bail, right? So now, if I am living in a community of lower income community or maybe a community of color that is not financially thriving, and my son gets arrested, or I get arrested, right? And I'm living in this community, and now I've been accused of a crime, and the judge arbitrarily, sets a bail of $5,000. I now, as the person that has been arrested, have to come up with $5,000 in order to gain my freedom so I can get out of jail, so I can then begin the process of fighting the case that has been presented to me, or fighting the accusation that has been placed upon me, right? Now, in many of these communities, you're dealing with many of these communities, many of the individuals are living below the poverty line in terms of household income based on the statistics that determine what is and what is not poverty here in America. $5,000 is not fun amount. $5,000 is not money that's sitting around when you're dealing with individuals from these communities. So now what do? I'm in jail. I'm being accused of a crime. I want to be able to fight it, but I can't fight it from the inside, right? Because I still have a family that I have to take care of. I still have responsibilities. I still have a job. So what do? Well, I call the commercial bail bondsman, because the commercial bail bondsman has a business, and their business is, I am going to bail you out, sir. But of course, I'm going to bail you out for a fee, right? So the commercial bail bondsman says, well, your bail is $5,000, no problem. We'll charge you this non-refundable fee, and then once you pay this fee, you'll be able to get out and you can begin the process. Well, the bail bondsman typically, and this is across many states, typically charge about 10% of what the court assigned bond is, right? So if the judge says to you, your bond to get your freedom, to go out to fight your case, to make sure that you return back to the court to fight your case, your bond is your bail is $5,000. The commercial bail bondsman says, well, we'll pay the $5,000, but you have to pay us 10% of that $5,000, which is $500. And, to some people, $500 is nothing, right? Hey, no problem. I'll give you $500. I get out, get back to my life, start working on my case, come back for trial, and defend myself. But again, there is a systematic plan in place that targets communities where $500 is not available upon request, right? So, and this is not, and just to sidetrack a little bit, the disturbing part, not disturbing, I gotta stop using that word, but the interesting thing that I found out is that they did a survey, and this is for the entire country. Almost 40% of Americans said that in the case of an emergency, they wouldn't have they don't have $400 to cover unexpected expenses, right? That's 40% of the country. I put that out there because now let's shrink it down to communities of lower income communities, and then many communities of color. So if the entire United States, 40% of the residents don't have $400 in case of an emergency, imagine what it's like when you're dealing with these targeted communities. Okay, so now going back to my example, $5,000 bail, $500, 10% I could pay to the bail bondsman. That's $500. I don't have $500. Well, guess what? I have to sit in jail. So now you're sitting in jail, right? And a lot of these cases are usually for non-violent offenses. So you're sitting in jail for, let's say you had, many times what happens is you got traffic tickets and you didn't pay the traffic tickets because, once again, you don't have the income to pay the traffic tickets because you're trying to pay rent and take care of your family, things of that nature. Now that ticket then goes into default. It goes into now a bench warrant, and now you get pulled over for a tail light, and they say you got a warrant, we're taking you to jail. Now you're sitting in jail for a minor traffic offense and some traffic tickets, and the judge then presents you with a bail. Now, here's the other interesting thing. Many times, these commercial, you get the bail set, right? Many times, depending on the size of the bail bondsman, these commercial bail bondsman companies won't even help, because they're looking to maximize the most money that they possibly can. So if your bail is $10,000, then they're like, we'll work with you. 5,000, we'll work with you. But if the judge sets a bail for you of $500, says, well, you can bail out and be released on your own recognizance for $500. But guess what? If you didn't have the $500 before you went to jail, you surely don't have it now. And you can't even call a bail bondsman, because the bail is so small, the bail bondsman doesn't even want to help you out. So now what do? Now you're stuck in jail. So that's how the system works. So let me get back, because I wanted to stay on topic. And I'm specifically talking about the commercial bail industry in the United States and how it works, and how predatory it is, because it's very predatory. Typically, again, the industry already knows that it is going to serve a certain community of people. Typically, these are communities of color. Typically, these are communities of lower income. Typically, these are, and in many cases, you're dealing with women, okay? Because the women, unfortunately, have become, and many times, the main source of income in the household. So if their husband, their son, their daughter gets arrested, the first call that they make is usually to mom, right? Or to the wife, say, hey, I need you to bail me out. So these companies are targeting women of color, women in lower income communities, because they know that all they want to do is get their loved one out of jail. So it's literally like a marketing technique to ensure that these companies continue to increase their profits. So let's talk about the industry a little bit. So here's some key information. First of all, as I said, in the United States and the Philippines, basically the only two countries left that do cash bail systems, okay? The profits. Let's talk about the profits. So in the United States right now, there's around 15,000 listed bail bondsmen in the United States, right? And on average, they bail out about 2 million people every year, okay? Not only are they bailing out 2 million people every year, but in terms of the money that they make in profit, I'm talking about profit. These companies generate almost $2.4 billion each year in profit. Okay? That's $2.4 billion each year in profit. And I'm saying it twice because I want to make sure that that number doesn't go over anyone's head. And, the challenge and the problem with this process is that these companies, again, they're not doing this out of the kindness of their heart. They're not concerned with community safety and making sure people get a honest chance to fight their case. They already know that this is about a business and that they are specifically targeting specific communities in order to make these profits grow as much as possible. Again, there's really no discretion in terms of who they can speak to. In terms of from a regulatory standpoint, their discretion is based on who will and who can pay the money or who can generate the most money. In addition, you got many of these companies. What they do is they set up these predatory contracts that keep people in these agreements until the trial ends. So many times, not only will they, be the bail bondsman, but they'll hire bounty hunters to make sure that the people are coming to court, or they'll threaten people. I mean, there's really little regulation when it comes to many of these bail bondsmen. They charge some ridiculous fees. I mean, I was reading, what was I reading? I was reading about the fees that they charge. Listen to some of these fees that they charge. So again, there's a premium that has to be paid, right? I mean, there's a premium that has to be paid for the bond. So again, in the first example, I said, $5,000, right? But let's up it. $10,000 bail. In order for you to get out, you'd have to pay. You working with a bail bondsman, you have to pay $1,000, right? 10% of 10,000 is $1,000. If you don't have that $1,000, right, which you probably don't, right, because again, we're talking about specific communities, and this is not a generalization. This is an actual targeted plan that these companies have devised. You don't have the $10,000 to bail anybody out. You don't have the $1,000 for the premium. So what do? Well, the company says, well, we'll help you out. You can finance it. So now you're financing the $1,000 that you don't have to make weekly payments on the $1,000. And guess what? If you miss a payment, your loved one can then be picked up and taken back to jail. Okay? So first you have financing fees. They charge credit card processing fees, because many times if you have individuals that end up paying this, they're usually using a credit card to finance it because they don't have the $1,000 or the $500 sitting around. The second thing, or the third thing, you have notary fees. They pass those along, and then you have electronic monitoring fees, because if the court requires that the defendant has to have electronic monitoring while they're out fighting their case, then that service has to be set up through the court. The bail bondsman is the one that handles that, and then they pass those fees on. But of course, those fees always have a profit margin in them, because this is a for-profit business. It just goes on and on and on. But I wanted to also talk about the effects that this has, right? Because many times, like I said, the bail is set, and the bail is so small that sometimes the bail bondsmen won't even pick it up. And what ends up happening is that people sit in jail. I think I read on average, most people sit in pretrial for 135 days. That's, almost 4 months that you're sitting in jail because you couldn't pay a $500 bail. And a lot of times when that occurs, it's disruptive to the entire family. So let me play this clip from a woman who talks about what happens when you get locked up and you are unable to pay the bail. Take a listen to this.
I stayed in there for approximately a year, and I beat the case. But in that time, I lost so much by me not being able to bail out. I had a son that got married. My grandmother died. My nephew was killed. It's very rare for a mother to get bailed out, because actually you're the head of the household, because the males are already incarcerated.
And so that is a perfect example of what happens in many of these cases. locked up for a year, trying to fight the case, doesn't have the bail, loses job, family members passed on, and nothing is being done in terms of these people, in terms of these individuals being able to fight their case. Um, Another fact: many people, when I read this is disturbing. So most people that are in jails today are sitting in jails. They're on pretrial. So these are not individuals that have been convicted. These are individuals that are in pre-trial detention. There's a stat here from prisonpolicy.org. It says 67% of people sitting in jails now um, are being held on pretrial. That's almost 450,000 people that are sitting in jail. The average bond or the average bail for most felonies is $10,000. But again, these are individuals that don't have the ability to pay the 10,000 or to pay the 10% premium. Um, and again, the average yearly income for many people that are in the system and are affected by this bail system is $16,000 for men, $11,000 for women, way below the poverty line. Um, in terms of the percentage of pretrial population that is black, 43%. So once again, this is a systematic targeting of individual people. There's no denying that, right? Because if 43% of the population is black that is sitting in pretrial, but from a nationwide standpoint, black people only represent 12, 13% of the United States population, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we call a targeted effort. Um, and, getting back, I want to stay on track. So, the commercial bail industry, and I specifically wanted to stay on topic with that because this is a huge topic. I mean, I can easily break this down into 4 or 5 different podcasts, but for the sake of this podcast, I wanted to focus on commercial bail industry. And so the commercial bail industry is not regulated, or I should say, it has very little regulation. Many states don't even require the individuals to have licenses. Matter of fact, it says here that 10 states have no license requirements for bail agents, and while 37 others have minimal requirements. Currently, there are 4 or 5 states that do not have any bail system at all, so they don't do any cash bail system. I believe that's Illinois, um, Oregon. I can't remember the other 2 or the other 4, but I know Illinois and Oregon has done away with their cash bail system, so they don't even have that into effect. But again, going back, many of these um, bail bondsmen don't even have bail commercial bail companies are not even regulated in states. They have no licensing requirements, no exam requirements. Some of them don't even do criminal background checks. A lot of these bail bond companies don't have a residency requirement, so they can live in another state and operate almost like they're operating a franchise. And again, specifically and strategically placed in areas where they know that the um, arrest and over policing will be high enough that they can ensure that they get a profit from being in those areas. Um, you know what? I'm going to keep going on with this because there's a lot more information that I would like to discuss about this. So, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop here with part 1. We're going to call this part 1 of the commercial bond industry. And I'm going to, break this into 2 parts so I can really dig my heels into some of the additional stats of how this is affecting people across the country, and then offer some of these solutions that have been presented to ensure that this does not continue to happen. So let's stop here, and we'll pick back up on this next week. So, as always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the people's voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute. People's voice.